My name is Isabel Montero, and at 70 years old, I've learned that money reveals people's true nature. My daughter-in-law Daniela proved this when she thought I was dying, but she didn't know I had a surprise waiting for her. It all began when my son Andres married Daniela 5 years ago. From the start, I noticed her eyes sparkled more when we talked about money than when she looked at my son. "And this house is all yours, Dona Isabel?" she asked during her first visit, her eyes greedily scanning my mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. "Yes, dear. My late husband and I built it 40 years ago." "It must be worth a fortune," she murmured, more to herself than to me. I should have noticed the signs then, but I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. My son loved her, and I wanted to believe she loved him too. The first years were tolerable. Daniela played her part as the devoted daughter-in-law well, though I noticed how she cataloged every valuable object in my house with the eye of a professional appraiser. "Is that vase from the Ming Dynasty?" she would ask, "or are those real diamonds in that necklace?" My fortune, inherited from my husband and multiplied by my own smart investments, was considerable, but I never liked to flaunt it. Money was a tool, not a measure of personal worth. However, Daniela had other ideas. With each passing year, her questions about my inheritance became more direct. "Mother-in-law, don't you think you should start distributing your assets while you're alive? You know, to avoid problems later." "Problems?" I would ask innocently. What problems could there be? "Well, inheritance taxes are so high, and Andres is your only son. Everything will go to him, anyway." What Daniela didn't know was that I had grown up in an orphanage. My fortune didn't come from a family inheritance, but from the hard work and vision of my late husband, who had also been an orphan. We promised that if we succeeded, we would help other children like us. The situation worsened when I turned 70. During my birthday party, organized by Daniela, who insisted on inviting a notary, just in case, I fainted. It wasn't anything serious, simply heat and fatigue, but Daniela saw her opportunity. "Mother-in-law, you must take care of yourself," she exclaimed with false concern. "Do you have everything in order? Your will." "Don't worry, dear. Everything is arranged." Her eyes sparkled. "Really? Could we review it together? Just to be sure." That's when a plan occurred to me. With the help of my old friend and lawyer, Miguel, I organized a little theater production. Over the next few months, I began acting weaker, more forgetful. I let Daniela see me taking medications, actually vitamins, and pretended worrying phone conversations with doctors. Daniela took the bait completely. Suddenly, she became the most attentive daughter-in-law in the world. She came every day, cooked my favorite meals, after discreetly asking about allergies or medical conditions, and constantly talked about how she would care for my precious possessions after my passing. My son, busy with his work as a surgeon, didn't notice anything strange. "It's so good that you and Daniela get along so well, Mom," he would say. If he only knew. The culminating moment came during a family dinner. Daniela had prepared my favorite dish, which I actually hate, and served an expensive wine with my money, of course. "Mother-in-law," she said in a honeyed voice, "I've been thinking, wouldn't it be better if Andres and I moved in here? So we could take better care of you." "Oh, dear, I don't want to be a burden." "Not at all. In fact, why don't you give us the house now? Then you could go to a nursing home. I mean, to a quieter place." I almost choked on my wine hearing her audacity, but I maintained my act. "Well, since you mention inheritance." Her eyes shone like new coins. "When do you plan to die and leave us your fortune, mother-in-law?" The question came out before she could contain it, raw and bare. The silence that followed was deafening. Andres, who had just entered the dining room, froze in the doorway. "Daniela," he exclaimed, horrified. But I just smiled. "Actually, dear, I was about to announce that I've made all the decisions about my inheritance. Why don't you come tomorrow for the reading of my will?" "Tomorrow?" Daniela almost jumped from her chair. "But you're not dying?" "No, dear." "But we shouldn't leave these things until the last moment, right?" The next day, in Miguel's office, a small group gathered. Andres, Daniela, my lifelong housekeeper, Maria, and the director of Santa Rosa Orphanage, where I grew up. Before we begin, I said, sitting comfortably in my chair, I want everyone to see this. I gave Miguel a signal, who played a video on his office screen. It was a compilation of secret recordings from the past few months. Daniela talking on the phone about how she would spend the old lady's money, searching through my drawers when she thought I was sleeping, even consulting with a lawyer about how to accelerate the transfer of assets. Daniela's face turned pale. Andres looked sick. Mom, I didn't know. I know, son. That's why we're here. Miguel began reading the will. The mansion, the jewels, the stocks, everything Daniela had been coveting for years, was going directly to Santa Rosa Orphanage. What? Daniela jumped to her feet. You can't do that. Of course I can, dear. It's my money. But, Andres is your only son. And that's why, Miguel continued, the 10 million peso educational trust will be administered exclusively by Andres to provide scholarships for orphan children who want to study medicine like him. My son looked at me with tears in his eyes, finally understanding why I had always encouraged him to become a doctor, to help others. This is ridiculous, Daniela shouted. We'll contest the will. You can try, Miguel said calmly. But everything is perfectly legal. Besides, he added, playing more videos, I doubt you want these recordings to become public. Daniela collapsed in her chair, defeated. One more thing, I said softly. Maria, who has cared for this family for 30 years, will receive an apartment and a lifetime pension. My faithful housekeeper began crying with gratitude. And Daniela, I continued, I leave you something special. She looked up, a last glimmer of hope in her eyes. I leave you a lesson. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it certainly reveals character. In the months that followed, my life changed in unexpected ways. Andres divorced Daniela, who tried unsuccessfully to contest the will. My son now divides his time between his private practice and the orphanage scholarship program. The mansion will become a home for children with special needs, something my husband and I always dreamed of. Maria remains with me, not as an employee, but as the friend she has always been. And me, well, it turns out that pretending to be sick made me realize how much I had left to do. I began giving talks at the orphanage about finance and business ethics. The children call me Grandma Isabel, and each smile, each hug, is worth more than all the jewels Daniela coveted. One day, while supervising the mansion's remodeling for its new purpose, Andres came to visit me. How did you know? He asked. How did you know Daniela was only interested in the money? A mother knows, I replied. Besides, someone who only sees the material value of things will never understand the true meaning of wealth. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen it. Don't apologize. Sometimes we need to be reminded of what's really important in life. I looked around at the workers transforming my old house into a home for children in need. Your father would be proud, I said. Not of the money we made, but of how we decided to use it. Andres smiled, and for the first time in years, I saw in his eyes the same sparkle he had as a child when he talked about helping others. The last I heard of Daniela, she was trying to win over another rich man. But now she carries a warning. Beware of clever mothers-in-law who record videos. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in the garden watching the children play, I think about how a plan to expose greed became something much more meaningful. I didn't just save my fortune from greedy hands, I found a way to multiply its true value. Because real wealth isn't in what you have, but in what you give. And as for dying, well, we all are, in a way. The difference lies in what you decide to do with the time you have. In my case, I decided to use it to teach a lesson about greed and, in the process, fulfill the dream of 2 orphans who long ago promised to make the world a better place. Not bad for a dying old lady, right? Life sometimes has an ironic way of teaching lessons. Daniela wanted my fortune, but in her greed, she helped me find an even greater purpose for it. The orphanage children now have a bright future, and my son has rediscovered his true calling. And me, well, it turns out I have a lot of life ahead of me. And every moment will be dedicated to proving that true inheritance isn't measured in money, but in the impact we leave on others' lives. That's a fortune no will can contain. My childhood at Santa Rosa Orphanage had been difficult but full of valuable lessons. Sister Mercedes, who ran the orphanage then, taught us that true wealth was in the heart. Isabel, she would say while I helped in the kitchen, God doesn't give us things to accumulate, but to share. Those words resonated deeply when I met Roberto, my future husband, at a charity fair. He too had grown up in an orphanage, and we shared the same vision about money and social responsibility. If we ever succeed, we promised one night under the stars, we'll create opportunities for children like us. And we did succeed, beyond our wildest dreams. Roberto had a gift for real estate business, and I for investments. In 20 years, we built an empire. Additional scenes about Daniela's manipulative behavior. Daniela's tactics were subtle at first. She began by organizing my important documents, making sure she knew every detail of my finances. Mother-in-law, she would say with false concern, I found these investment papers while cleaning. Shouldn't we simplify your accounts? Andres could handle them for you. Once I caught her photographing pages of my account book when she thought I was taking a siesta. Another time, I overheard her talking on the phone with an appraiser about the value of my antiques. The mansion's transformation became a project that united the community. Architects donated their services, local companies provided materials, and former orphanage residents offered their expertise. Each room was redesigned with children in mind. My old study became a library filled with donated books. The ballroom was transformed into a multipurpose space for therapy and play. The room that excited me most was what had been Andres's. It became a music room, filled with instruments for children with musical talent, but no resources to develop it. Remember when you were little? I asked Andres, as we watched the remodeling. You always said you wanted to heal the whole world. And you never laughed at that dream, he replied, his eyes moistening. You always supported me, even when Dad thought it was too idealistic. Your father understood eventually. The night before he died, he made me promise to keep that spirit of service alive in the family. The impact of the new center was felt throughout the city. Other business people, inspired by our initiative, started their own aid programs. The mayor declared a social responsibility initiative based on our model. But the most rewarding were the small victories. The autistic child who found his voice through music, the teenage girl who discovered her passion for medicine, the small group of orphans who finally found a place to call home. 5 years after that while reading, life had taken many turns. Andres married again, this time to a pediatrician who shared his passion for helping others. Together they run the center's medical program, providing free care to children in need. Daniela, I heard, tried her strategy with another wealthy businessman, but my story had become a cautionary tale in social circles. Beware of mothers-in-law who record videos became a recurring joke at high society parties. Maria, my faithful housekeeper turned friend, now runs the job training program for the center's teenagers. Every child needs not just love, she says, but also tools to build their future. Santa Rosa Orphanage merged with our center, creating a comprehensive care model that goes from early childhood through university education. Sister Mercedes, now in her 90s, still visits to tell stories to the children. See, Isabel, she said on her last visit. God doesn't give us things to accumulate, but to share. I smiled, remembering the orphan girl I once was, and all the lessons life had taught me. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in the garden watching the children play, I think of Roberto and our promise under the stars. We didn't just fulfill our dream, we multiplied it. And as for inheritance, well, it turns out that true inheritance isn't what you leave when you die, but what you build while you live. That's a fortune no one can contain, and no greedy daughter-in-law can steal. It's the fortune of shared love, fulfilled dreams, and transformed lives. Not bad for a dying old lady, right? And so, as the sun sets on another day at our center, I look around and see the true wealth, in the children's laughter, in my son's pride when he saves a life, in the dignity of our graduates when they return to mentor others. This is my true inheritance, one that grows and multiplies with each life it touches. Because in the end, life isn't about how much you accumulate, but how much love you sow along the way. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.